Can you see my screen okay?
I can. Just need to switch it over to the PowerPoint.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, so good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kat Silva. I'm the Operations Project Manager here at ODOT, and I am responsible for supporting the Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee and you all in your execution of your duties as members of the committee. So welcome to our first meeting of the second iteration of the committee and first meeting in 2026. Um, Before we jump into the agenda and materials, I wanted to acknowledge that we had a final meeting of the first iteration of the Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee in December. And we had a listening session with those committee members, some of whom are continuing on this iteration of the committee. Regarding practices that we should continue and ways that we can improve to support committee members in executing their duties. And primarily what we heard is, folks wanted to see a balance of presentation and conversation. They wanted materials that were easy to digest and having the right staff in the room to be able to answer questions. And where we had follow-up and action items, wanting to see kind of follow through with those action items and defining concrete action steps and ways that we could address those things in future meetings. Being intentional about the advice that we seek from this group and the direction that is sought and how we use and implement that advice and direction, and creating a kind of line of sight for elected officials and the legislature on the why behind project changes and decisions with major projects. Developing materials that are easy to understand about project benefits, kind of taking the through line on major projects from beginning to end, from cradle to graves, as they say. Being transparent about what has gone well and what has not gone well on projects, as well as finding time and opportunity to bring in contractors and others to aid in transparency and credibility around project progress and project risks and things like that. So we have taken all of that to heart and are bringing all of that in our material preparation and preparing for future meetings down the road and in creating the work plan for this committee and want to create a open line of communication between you all and myself for suggestions and on your feedback on ways that we can improve on materials that you'd like to see at any point in time. Feel free to reach out to me. And so, Michaela, if you want to flip to the next slide. So for today, we'll get into a round of introductions here for committee members, and then I will pitch it over to Tova Peltz, our interim division administrator for delivery and operations and chief engineer, to talk about the committee scope and provide a bit of an orientation on the oversight role that the committee will play, as well as an overview of the proposed approach that we are taking to providing reporting on our major projects and on meeting materials. And then I will talk about the 2026 work plan that we've started to flesh out. As it gets towards the end of the year, it's a little bit lighter, but we'll continue to populate it as we move through the year. And then we have some folks in the room that will talk about proposed modifications to key performance measures for the agency. Next slide. All right, so I will go ahead and pass it over to Tova to introduce herself, and then we can kind of do a round of introductions for committee members.
Thanks, Kat. Good afternoon. My name is Tova Peltz, and as Kat said, I am ODOT's interim delivery and operations division administrator and interim chief engineer, which are those two positions are now one and the same. And I'm looking forward to this committee and the conversations that are going to be coming this year. So thank you all for joining us. Let's see. Let's go to Paula.
Great. Hi, I'm Paula Hammond. I work for WSP USA. I worked at Washington DOT for 34 years and was the Secretary of Transportation for my last six. Have been with WSP for 12 years. I work mostly with state DOTs around the country and look at helping them achieve best practices and organizational goals as well as strategic initiatives. Thanks.
Thanks, Paula. Thanks for joining us. Ted?
Sure.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name's Ted Odlin. I'm a heavy highway contractor. I've been in the business for way too many years, I suppose. Um, my company was FE Ward Incorporated. We built bridges all through the Northwest. And then I sold my firm and I started Odlin Evans with David Evans and Associates. It was a joint venture between us. Did that for a number of years. I served as president of the local AGC chapter in 1993, and I served as national president for AGC of America in 2010. So I've been in the business a long time. I work now as a consultant. I do a lot with Sunt Construction. I mentor minority contractors. I'm probably working with 4 or 5 right now on just helping them better learn the business, how to get paid, how to plan work, that type of thing. So that's me.
Thanks, Ted. Chair Brown?
Sorry, I keep popping in and out. I apologize, but I think I have my internet under control now. As my title says, I'm chair of the Oregon Transportation Commission. I'm also general manager, Rogue Valley Transportation District down in Medford, Oregon, and I'm thrilled to be joining all of you and working with you towards making sure that we're reporting out the way we need to be. And so I'm going to just stop there, but that's who I am and why I'm here.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Byer?
Hi, I'm Lee Byer. I'm Vice Chair of the Transportation Commission. Before that, I served for about 30 years in the Oregon legislature, most of that time on the Transportation Committee, and actually wrote HB 2017, which created this committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I think that let's see, we're missing our interim director, Director Lisa Sumption. She's, I think, heading over to the Capitol here momentarily, I believe. So she's unable to join us this afternoon. But I know she will join us for future meetings, and we are still, we need to finalize our final subject matter expert for subsequent meetings as well. So we're short one member right now. Kat, that's the extent of introductions for the committee moving forward.
Correct. Yes. We're hopeful to have identified and onboarded a NEPA expert by our February meeting. And so for now, this is the full committee that we have. Slide, please. And Tova, I will pass it over to you for the committee scope.
Great, thank you. So this committee has a number of charges. The sort of biggest lift item is really focused on oversight of major projects, and report and developing quarterly reporting that will be shared first with the commission and then with the legislature. So and then related recommendations associated with major project delivery. This committee will also be reviewing our legislatively adopted key performance measures, which we'll talk about, which we'll be talking about today, and then looking at statewide trends in construction, and other opportunities for recommendations on how how ODOT manages its portfolio, manages its projects, this strategic approach to project and portfolio development. The oversight of major projects is, as they said, like probably the biggest will be the biggest lift, and will absorb the most of our time as an advisory committee, and will be specifically focusing on projects that are $50 million and greater per legislation. The focus is the reporting requirement is projects $250 million and greater. And so what we're looking for is really to provide more accountability, more insight for the legislature, for the commission, and for this committee into our larger projects. And we have 5 projects right now that meet the $250 million threshold. We have 18 projects that meet the $50 million threshold. We're emphasizing all 18. I think that one of the things we need to talk about as a group today is whether we are as we put together a report on the progress and status of all 18 of those projects, what subset we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about in this group and present in this group. And our suggestion right now is that we use our meeting time to really focus on those 5 projects that meet the legislative threshold of $250 million. And so we're looking out on a monthly basis. By statute, we're required to meet for an hour every month, but recognizing that going over the status of 5 of these major projects is probably going to take more than an hour, and we're suggesting that we extend those quarterly reporting meetings to be 2 hours to make sure there's time to present and to have a robust discussion about the status of those projects. There's definitely we want those discussions to be intensive and robust and back and forth and so on, not just presenting and moving on. And so carving out a little bit more time for that, we think will be valuable. So that would be four of our 12 meetings would be would have those extended schedules. So I would love some feedback from the rest of the committee about that approach, or questions about our approach to major projects. Our first round of major project reporting will be at next month's meeting. So what we're anticipating, Kat and I've spent a lot of time talking about this. We're expecting that it'll take a few iterations to really dial in the content of those reports and the right level of engagement, both in this space and with the legislature. And so I think the version of the reports that we look at next month as a group will be the first round of doing this. And we've gotten some internal input on content, but we're really looking forward to the input of this whole committee. So I'm going to pause and ask for feedback on approach to the discussion and approach to what we focus on next month in presentations.
You want us to officially raise our hands as we speak?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Paula.
And now that I did that, I assume, or maybe you can confirm, that you're going to use a framework of topics that will be discussed on every project so that there's a standard sort of
Yes.
response to key things.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, we have a template, and we have a template that we'll use for projects in planning, a template we'll use for projects that are in design, and a template we'll use for projects in construction. There's similarity between all 3, but the risk profile and cost, financial information about projects in those different phases really varies. So you'll see similarity in the template across those three categories.
Good, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Vice Chair Byer.
Yeah, how many projects are we talking about?
There are 18 projects that meet the $50 million threshold. Those 18 projects, some are in planning phase only right now and are only funded for that preliminary planning phase work. Others are in design or are multi-phase and have partial funding through design and construction. And then some of those projects are actually in construction today. And 5 of those 18 meet the $250 million threshold.
So are you assuming or thinking that we would review all 18 every month or?
No, not at all. The intention is that
Okay.
we have to report on a quarterly basis. So it's every 3 months, and we'll have a report a report comprised of updates on all 18 projects. But what I'm suggesting is that in our meeting time as a group, we focus on just the 5 that have that meet the $250 million threshold. Although there may be, as we look through the content, the materials on all 18, it's possible that as a group there'll be interest in talking about other projects in addition to those 5, and there may be value in highlighting some of the other, the smaller scale projects as well along the way. We certainly could do presentations on the 5 and then have a sixth agenda item to cover, to discuss things that have come up on the others. All right, I can't tell whose hand was raised first, so I'm going to go with Ted, and then Chair Brown. Ted.
Yes, if I understood you correctly, we are going to be able to look at projects that are in design. We're not going to have to wait for the project to be 100% complete.
That's right. This is a change from what the CIAC
Yes.
did previously. So we'll be looking at projects that are in early design all the way through projects in construction. And we'll be looking at that same suite of projects every quarter. So we'll be able to look at the progress of those projects.
Great. That's going to be terrific.
I'm really excited about it, honestly. And I'm glad you're here to be part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Chair Brown.
Well, first I want to apologize that I was a little bit rattled there in the beginning because of my technology, but I wanted to thank Ted and Paula both for volunteering or being volunteered. I'm not sure which it was, and coming on board. I think that the team that's being put together is really important. The comment that I had is the more information the staff can give us ahead of the meeting, to where we can actually look through the materials will be helpful. I think it'll be time saving on discussion points, because I think we'll be able to really look at it. So that's something that's going to be really important to me. If I can have a few days prior to it to be able to look at it, it's going to be helpful.
Understood and agreed. That is our intention. Ideally, I think we're shooting for at least 5 days in advance, but we will see. Any other comments or feedback? Ted, did you have your hand up again, or is your hand still up?
No, my question is, if we get that ahead of time, we know what projects we're going to be looking at. Being in the industry, we hear a lot of things between contractors and designers and so on. So it would really be helpful because we could do a little homework. I think we could bring more to the committee that way.
That's great. I think that's a great point, and we'll make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. My suggestion then is that we'll get the materials out well in advance of the meeting next month, so there'll be the opportunity to review, and we'll send the materials and the draft agenda, and we'll leave space on that agenda. We'll focus on the 5 projects that meet the $250 million threshold, and then we'll leave space to discuss questions, comments, feedback on other projects as well. And if you're looking at the materials in advance and you want to flag a project for more discussion, let us know in advance. I think that we'll have our teams prepare for those 5 presentations. And so, but we can also have time in the next meeting to talk about format for for subsequent reports as well. So my last follow-up is about extending next month's meeting to be 2 hours, so we have ample time to go over those presentation projects and discussion. Paula, I see you nodding.
That works.
I'm good.
Ted, great. Vice Chair Byer, Chair Brown. All right, it looks like we have consensus that we'll extend that meeting to be 2 hours, and we will do that we'll just plan on doing that for all of every third meeting will be 2 hours so that we have ample time for presentation and discussion. Vice Chair Byer.
Do we have a set time for these meetings?
Yes, they're all scheduled for, I believe, the third Wednesday of the month at 1 o'clock. Is that correct, Kat? And they
Yes,
should
that's
they
correct.
great. And I think the invites are already out and on calendars. So
Mhm.
we will update the invites for every third meeting to extend it to be 1 to 3 p.m. Great. All right, and let's go to the next slide, which to some extent I've covered a bit. As I said, like the projects are planning through construction. Not all the projects are fully funded. When we go over what you'll see in the report template is it really emphasizes financial overview of the project, sources, funding strategy, sources of funding to date, money spent to date, cost estimated cost range, emphasis on risks and opportunities for the projects, and then and schedule. So, and we'll use, as I said before, we'll use the same same template for all the projects, so there'll be some familiarity there. And I think part of what we'll do next month is also get feedback about content and format, so we can make adjustments as needed for subsequent rounds. I think that this first round of both reports and presentations will be a little bit of practice. So I know that our teams that are presenting are a little bit nervous about this first round and also excited about it. So I think next month's presentations and conversations will be good ones. And on that note, I think we can go to the next slide and I can pass it back to you, Kat.
Perfect. So I've populated this slide with just a little bit of an overview of kind of the next 6-ish months of plans for monthly meetings for this committee. So obviously this we're launching, and we'll finalize the membership this month, and you guys will see KPM modifications here in just a couple of minutes. And then next month we will bring the first major projects quarterly report to you all. And we will also be, as soon as we close that meeting, we can make a few tweaks based on your feedback, and then we'll be submitting that report to the Full Transportation Commission and the legislature. And then in March, we'll be doing an overview of the capital investment plan and some insight into our portfolio management approach, just generally to give kind of a broader swath at kind of how we're managing the delivery and operations program on whole. And then in April, we'll be back with quarterly check-in on project delivery performance metrics, as well as an updated committee charter for you all to be reviewing and us to solidify. And then, in the subsequent months, May, we'll be bringing back our second quarterly report for in the second iteration for feedback and review. We'll be bringing back those five $250 million and over projects, as well as any other projects of interest that you all identify and would like to see in more depth. And we'll be focused on getting any additional feedback before we kind of finalize that report template for submission to the OTC and to the legislature again. Obviously, we'll be getting feedback from the commission, the full commission, and the legislature as well. And so we'll be advising the committee members as to any changes that are made to content and any tweaks that we make based on feedback that we get at those two spaces as well. And as I mentioned, in your packet of materials, there is also the kind of table format for the work plan, which has identified deliverables on that timeline, as well as kind of the topics that we'll be covering each month. As we move forward throughout the year, we'll be populating kind of later months in the year. So please, if there are things that you'd like to see in more depth, if there's topics you want us to cover, or anything that you want us to kind of go take a deeper dive on, please let me know, and we'll try to get that onto the work plan and into our monthly agendas. With that, I have opening it up for questions.
I'm sorry, I had a question. When is the legislature done this year? Do they have a sine die date?
I believe it's March 9th.
It's a short session.
Yes.
This year. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? All right, then I am going to call on PK to come up and speak on our performance measures.
First of all, good afternoon, Chair Brown and Committee. I'm Phil Case, the Performance Measurement Program Manager. It's been a minute since I've seen your faces, but it is good to see you again. So again, I appreciate your time because I know how valuable it is. I'm here today, of course, to talk about key performance measure changes that we're going to be requesting. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the package and consider those a little bit. And as we go forward, I'll go through them pretty quickly today because I think that most of you have probably had a chance to look at that. But as you're aware, our key performance measures demonstrate OregonDOT's effort towards positive outcomes for the citizens of Oregon. And of course, it's required to be reported under state law as part of our budget process. So anyway, as a little bit of background, and I think many of you have been here since 2017, we're coming up on a decade almost where our CIAC's role has been to recommend these key performance measure changes and report key performance measures to the OTC. So obviously, once we go through that process, then we present them to our Legislative Fiscal Office and Department of Administrative Services for incorporation into the budget discussions. And of course, the legislature will hopefully approve those changes during the next long session, which will be next year. So anyway, it is a process, and you're certainly the process. This is kind of where it starts, as we've already talked to our respective program managers, our senior agency leadership, our agency director, and now you as our Continuous Improvement Advisory Committee and as required under HB 2017. Following this, we'll move on to the Oregon Transportation Commission. Okay, so now let's kind of get to the meat of this. And thank you for bringing that up. There's a calendar. We have requirements to do all this. We'll be talking, or I'll be talking to our Oregon Transportation Commission members on the 12th of March about this particular topic. And then assuming we're done with that discussion today and answer all the questions and concerns you have, as well as the Transportation Commission, then we'll move on to present those no later than April 1st to the Legislative Fiscal Office. So key performance measure changes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this again pretty quickly. I would first defer to my subject matter experts in the room, or those division administrators who would prefer to discuss any or answer any questions, but I'll go through this. We're going to start off with our assets, specifically pavement condition. We have a current key performance measure, and we've had this for as long as I've been here, so about 15 years. There's been talk over the last few years about changing or adding to our key performance measure changes, because as we're well aware, asset condition and paying for those assets is a very hot topic these days. I don't need to tell anyone about that. The problem and the discussion is that the current key performance measure doesn't, and this goes with bridge as well, does not particularly do a good job anymore discussing kind of the overall condition of our bridges and roads for this matter. So what we're proposing is two new key performance measures for pavement and for bridge. One is percent of highway lane miles recorded as good, and then one is percent of state highway lane miles as poor. And that is correct. Yes, ma'am. This aligns our key performance measure with our federal performance measures for pavement to kind of align that reporting, and it aligns more closely with our strategic action plan metrics, and it basically reflects how we're performing a little bit better. You can have, as an example, you can have virtually all of your lane miles, state lane miles, as fair as it currently is, with that they're all about to go into a poor category. So it doesn't, fair is such a large range, it really doesn't do a very good job of anymore describing kind of how the condition of our roads are. This is similar to our bridges. Again, not distressed is kind of hard to describe. And first of all, we're not going to be recording these things that way anymore. And so we're proposing two new key performance measures again to highlight, what's really good as far as bridge deck area and what's poor. And again, that more aligns with our strategic action plan metrics, which is kind of where we're headed, and more accurately reflects the work that we're doing. Plus, we're no longer going to be calculating the not distressed, as the current measure relies on sufficiency rating, which is no longer available when we convert to the specifications for a national bridge inventory. And of course, it's just difficult to calculate and to communicate. So I have our experts in the room to talk about those two subjects if any of our committee members have any questions about those. But those are the two pavement and two bridge key performance measure changes that we're recommending. I would say I'm not 100% sure, but I know that Ray is in the room, so maybe he can answer that. I think I know what the answer is. But
Am
he's
I
here.
clear? To measure your percentage based on deck area, is that what nationally folks are doing with bridges? Because oftentimes people want to compare you, just compare state by state.
Yeah, I believe we're reporting it based on deck area. We actually track both by count and by deck area internally.
And this aligns with the federal measures as well.
Right.
Any other comments, concerns, or questions at this point with those two? Okay.
Well, I'm not quite understanding if when we're worried about bridges failing, is measuring just deck area, is that get at the issue? Is that the right measurement?
Deck area is probably the best way to standardize how we characterize the size of the assets we have that we're managing.
Okay.
Of course, that's not to say. Go ahead.
It doesn't, though, speak to the type of failure that might be occurring on a bridge. If it's something to do with the foundation or the, blah, blah, blah. That's whole different measurements you do, right?
That's one level below what we have, poor or fair, either by area or by count.
Mm-hmm.
Does that get at the concern that is raised a lot, mostly about the wooden bridges and the wood failing?
Yes, in that they represent a fairly significant portion of the poor bridges that we have.
And the deck area will get at that measurement?
Relative to the rest of the inventory, yes.
Okay.
Now that raised another concern or question for me. Do you also, and maybe down in the details, you've got all this kind of information. Do you also cross-reference bridge condition by route volume, almost to get to a sense of the importance of, a bridge closure or failure to travel in public, interstate, rural, road?
So no, in just tracking poor and good, you
Right.
capture that. And we were kind of in the same boat with pavements on that one, and I don't know if they found a way out of that.
I was just thinking about in programming terms. You're going to look at those kinds of things, I suspect.
Yeah, Paula, it's a great point, and it's actually like from the standpoint of how we use the data, like the condition data, to inform our investments. We absolutely look at route, at the route, at the ADT, at freight, at resiliency, at all of these other components. But for the purpose of the performance metric reporting, we're keeping it at a higher level. And it's funny that you said that, because at one point I made a list of all the different subcategories that I would love to have as key performance measures, and PK redirected me and to ensure that we weren't getting overzealous in and how we're picking things apart. But from my standpoint, we look at all those subcategories of our condition, both for pavement and for bridge, when we're talking about investment priorities.
I just one last thought, and maybe it's just a suggestion that if you do some kind of a annual bridge report, that is not just your top line KPMs, you can get into those kind of details to make the case for why the investment in bridges is necessary. And it's going to give that kind of detail on impact of bridge closure, types of failures, scour, any kind of thing like that. It's going to help tell the story better for the legislature and the public to understand the risks.
And we do that.
Okay, good.
I think you need to let people know that replacement is maintenance, that we've just gotten to a point where maintenance won't do it anymore. It's got to be replaced because we're hearing so much about they won't maintain. All I want to do is build these crazy projects. So new construction's getting looked at as being wrong and bad. And maintenance to most people is, I guess, shoveling snow off the road.
And I think we've been really trying to emphasize how much how part of maintaining the system is preserving the system that we have and preserving pavement, preserving bridges is both like some of that's replacement, some of that is rehabilitation, some of that is ongoing maintenance and protection. It's like a combination of all of those things in order to take care of the system. And I think that's part of the that's certainly part of the conversation, that our bridge program and our pavement program isn't our bridge program isn't simply replacing bridges. Our bridge program is like replacement and preservation.
Yeah, just kind of my comment too along these lines is I think one of the reasons we really want to move to these new KPMs is it really is cheaper to maintain everything in a good condition than it is to let everything fail and replace. That's incredibly expensive to do. So by altering our KPMs to have a % good threshold, we're really trying to focus more on like preserve what we have as long as we can in good condition. And that's like the smart economical way to manage your infrastructure. So that's kind of really the heart of these changes, is to like really focus on the preservation of the assets instead of kind of letting them fail and then have to do a lot more costly rehabilitation or reconstruction.
Any other comments related to bridge or pavement? And I think that was a good summary of what the heart of that was. And that's not to say, I mean, these are the top line reports. We have a bridge condition report. We have a pavement report that come out regularly that talk about all these kinds of things, historic bridges, and why, although they're old and, no longer meet, modern standards for all kinds of things, we're keeping them, and why it's important that we do. And the same thing with roads and things like that, and how we're currently prioritizing our funding and things like that. Because like you said, it is a lot cheaper to keep these things in good condition than it is to replace them. Significantly cheaper. Okay. Moving on, then the next key performance measure change that we're going to make a recommendation to is under traffic safety. Currently, we've combined traffic fatalities and serious injuries into one top line measure of 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of, so as a rate. Rates are important, particularly when it comes to traffic fatalities and serious injuries. Well, we found as time has gone on, traffic fatalities and serious injuries no longer kind of track together. In the past, they kind of tracked together, so they got combined about 3 legislative sessions ago. But unfortunately, serious injuries they're increasing at a much faster rate than traffic fatalities are. It's just bad news there. And so what we don't want to do is kind of mask that by continuing to combine these two different things into one performance measure. So therefore, we're going to separate them like they used to be in the past. Because again, the whole point of these key performance measures is to identify and highlight those things that are kind of trending and are important, or things that we really need to kind of fine tune our message about, or really kind of take a look at, and separating these into two separate key performance measures is why we're separating them. Again, they're going to align with FHWA and NHTSA's performance measure requirements, and as we continue to report those things. Yes.
This one bothers me a little bit because it measures across all roads and streets in the state, I believe. And
yeah,
it sort of implies that ODOT has control over all of that. And it's really not true. Is there any way to separate that out and focus on ODOT facilities versus all facilities?
The answer to that question is yes. I think that, Amanda, you're here. Great. You want to address this, or I'll be happy to either way.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to jump in. Thanks, Vice Chair Breyer. Hey, everybody. My name is Amanda Peets. I'm the Division Administrator for Policy Data and Analysis, oversee the Transportation Safety Office and the data that goes into this measure as well. So, Chair, I think it's, or Vice Chair, as you know, we track transportation safety and crash data for the entire state of Oregon. Our funding programs are also set up to be agnostic of the roadway owner, meaning our ARTS program, All Roads Transportation Safety, addresses key safety issues and spot locations or systemic safety issues, whether it's on a state highway, a county road, or a city street, because we're trying as a whole in a state to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. So given that some of our funding programs are structured to support reductions in fatalities and serious injuries in a statewide basis, that's why we've kind of mirrored this measure to really consider all roads. That's pretty consistent with how we federally have to report everything. It's not just what's in the authority of the Department of Transportation, but we are required federally to report on all roads and fatalities and serious injuries. So there's just some consistency there, but I think to your point, there is a difference between what we see and the trends on our state facilities versus our local facilities. So on our state of the system dashboard, we actually break out what is on the state system versus what we're seeing on some of the local systems, because I think to that point, it's really important to understand what we can influence and what we can directly control, although we do have a number of funding streams that support kind of statewide activities.
Amanda, would it be possible to bifurcate that and do it as a totality and then separately report as on the state system?
Yeah, so Vice Chair, I think we can do that. Certainly, like I said, we do it through the state of the system dashboard. I think from your question is probably meaning for our legislative key performance measures that the legislature sees. They're not seeing that nuance in these reports, and that nuance might be important. I think, PK, maybe I'll actually defer some of this question to you, which is we had a number of performance measures in the past. We've shrunk that down. We're actually expanding it a little bit where it makes sense. But I think there's some challenges with adding more, certainly open to it. So I think that's a fair comment, but I don't know, PK, if you want to speak at all to the kind of expansion, contraction of performance measures as a whole.
Well, I think it's, it's implicit in having KPMs, which are legislatively mandated, not what we do, but that they want to hold us accountable for that. And I think there's a reality that a lot of the accidents that happen on county roads or city streets, we have absolutely no control and shouldn't be accountable for.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess it would just be a subset, not necessarily adding more, but I would report this and then have a subset of state system.
Sure, fair point. Thank you.
Vice Chair Breyer, I'd be happy to address this. As far as the reporting and the bifurcation of those two different numbers, that can easily be done in the narration as we write up these key performance measures, specifically stating, hey, this is the overall number, and here's why we're reporting a statewide number. And here is, for lack of a better term, and we'll come up with the right words for this. This is the system that we have more direct control over, and these are the actions that are being taken to help address those things. So I think that maybe we could address both of them with just the two key performance measures, but we'll make sure we highlight the differences. Otherwise, we'd end up with 4 traffic safety measures, which Might be a hard sell with our friends over across the street, but anyway. Any further comments on traffic safety?
I was trying to type a note, but it got too long. I assume that in your statewide safety plan, Target Zero or Towards Zero Deaths, whatever you call it, that you are partnering with the traffic safety. Is that within ODOT or is it a separate agency? And State Patrol or Oregon State Police. I would assume that you've got a partnership around safety and safe systems activities that you could refer to. I think you're right. ODOT can't be solely responsible, but to demonstrate the partnerships and efforts that you're doing for education, enforcement, engineering solutions, I think that's a way to couch that and not
Yeah, I
just
think,
throw the number out as if you own it.
yeah, I think that's a great point, Paula, in describing our story. And so PK, I think, hits on the narrative, which is an important part of just telling the whole rounding of everything, which is, it really does require those partnerships with law enforcement, with the judicial system, with other state agencies, local jurisdictions. We have those strong partnerships. And just kind of breaking that down a little bit more. And then, yes, we have our education and outreach components within the department, as well as our engineering components and how those are tied together, because it really is that holistic approach that we need to take.
But the data is what the data is. This many deaths, this many serious injuries, etc.
I know AGC has a committee with ODOT on traffic safety that's been going on for a number of years. I'm not sure who else is on that committee, but I know AGC and ODOT are involved.
Yep, great partnership, Ted.
Our traffic safety action plan describes a lot and in detail the relationships we have and the different sorts of activities that ODOT's partnering with whether it's our legislators, our law enforcement, different things like that, and what it is we're doing. So there's a fair amount of detail in that. It's an extensive description of that relationship and actions that we are taking. Any other questions regarding that? Okay. And then finally, to get down to our disadvantaged business enterprise utilization or DBE utilization, we've had this key performance measure for quite some time. It's changed and iterated over the years. This will not be a key performance measure change. However, it will be a mechanical adjustment. The difference being that with mechanical or data adjustment, we don't need approval from the legislature to change it because we're not changing it. We're simply changing the data that's going into the number. It's important and required on us to reach out to our friends over the Legislative Fiscal Office and Department of Administrative Services about this change because we're going to have a different number that comes out that we're going to report. So we have to do a very good job narrating about what it is that has changed with the data and why it will be different. In this particular case, in this example, the tracking of DBEs is at the federal level, and we have an interim final review. I know you're all aware that DBE has been a kind of a hot topic at the federal level, and there's been some rules that have changed recently, but there's not a final rule. There's an interim final rule. So based on the interim final rule is kind of that's where we use as the basis for our data sets and how we define DBEs. But those have not been finalized. So when they are, then we will use them. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to report our DBE utilization as far as dollars go. But we'll talk about in the narration what has changed and why the numbers look a little bit different. So without getting into too much detail, it'll be a mechanical adjustment, not a key performance measure change.
I've got a question. Do we ever compare ourselves to other states? I know Oregon is way ahead of a lot of states in DBE participation and the use of minority contractors. I mean, we're light years ahead of a lot of the other states. I never see us really compare to what's going on elsewhere.
I'm going to get out in front of my skis a little bit on this and say that you're absolutely right. Number one, this has been an important part of our work for many, many years. And a lot of work has been done towards that. I know that some states, Washington, Minnesota, some others, California, they've done a pretty good job of incorporating DB utilization in their reporting as well. Again, there's just a lot of turbulence in this particular subject right now. And so where we land with a final rule and how DBs are defined, that's yet to be determined. We've got, till our next long session, which is actually starting January of 2027. So we will know by then what the actual data, the basis for the data sets are. But until that time comes, we know that they're not what they're going to be because they've already changed. So again, we can kind of compare ourselves to other states, but until that final rule comes out, it's hard to say where we stand, or where we will stand, I should say.
Yeah, I think if we compare ourselves to other states, we can pat ourselves on the back for the good job we're doing. And when people complain we're not doing enough, it's easier to point and say, hey, we're 10 times better than most of the other states out there. We are doing a good job. So I think it's something we just don't get enough credit for.
I won't disagree with you there. We do have the numbers to back it up. I think that many states do the absolute minimum on this particular topic because it's not important to their state for whatever reason. And so therefore, I think you're right that, we found our utilization, has, from 23 to 24, went up, we almost doubled, which is great. However, the actual percentage of businesses have kind of declined a little bit. So, there's a lot behind this number, as you know a lot about this because you've been doing this a long time. And like I said, I don't want to say a whole lot more because I'll kind of I might misspeak, and I don't want to do that. I would defer if you have any specific questions about that or how we're comparing from state to state. I'd be happy to reach out to our folks in that office and get some numbers for you.
Thank you.
You bet. And then, for reference, the last sheet of my materials was simply where we started in 2013 and where we are now and what we're going into. So you can kind of see that the changes along the way. So it's a dynamic system. Key performance measures, at the end of the day, they're kind of the top line thing. There's so much that goes on behind it to report these things, but they kind of identify publicly, this is, as an agency, these are kind of the high level things that are important to us. And again, it is a process and we need to make sure we follow the timeline. So that being said, does anybody have any further questions at this point? I would like to say that, again, I appreciate the opportunity. You can feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions or concerns. And of course, I will be seeing you all again in August for our annual performance progress report that we're going to send up as well. So, okay, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And so I will just open it up one last time to the full committee to see if there's any final thoughts before we close the meeting today. And then I will also just flag that I will be sending out an extended meeting invite for the February meeting so that we have ample time to discuss major projects as we agreed. And I will also be extending out every quarterly meeting that we have for that same purpose. Is there any final thoughts before we close? Good. All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time and look forward to working with you all over the next year.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.